Husband left a note saying I'm done with you and I'm taking everything. But he didn't know my secret weapon. I came home to a note that shattered my entire world. I'm done with you, and I'm taking everything. My husband thought he could walk away, leaving me with nothing. But what he didn't know was that I had already outplayed him. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a masterclass in revenge, justice, and reclaiming power. Stick around, because by the time this is over, he'll be the one begging for mercy. What would you do if someone tried to erase everything you built? Watch till the end, you won't believe how this all unfolds. I never thought my life could unravel so fast. One moment, I was coming home from a weekend business trip, exhausted but relieved to finally be back in my own space. The next, I was staring at a hastily scribbled note on the kitchen counter, my breath catching in my throat as my mind struggled to process the words staring back at me. I'm done with you. This house is sold. Pack your things and be out by Friday. The words were sharp, cold, void of any emotion, much like the man who had written them. My hands trembled as I picked up the piece of paper, the edges crumpling beneath my grip. My husband, ex-husband, I corrected myself, hadn't even bothered to tell me in person. Just a note. A damn note. I let out a slow, controlled breath, forcing myself to stay calm. My suitcase was still by the door, my purse slung over my shoulder, as if I had just stepped into an alternate reality where the home I had built was no longer mine. I glanced around the kitchen, my gaze sweeping over the carefully curated decor, the marble countertops I had picked out during our last renovation, the framed photo of us from 5 years ago, still hanging by the fridge. Had he really thought I wouldn't fight back? That I would just accept this, pack up, and walk away quietly? A bitter laugh escaped my lips. He had no idea who he was dealing with. The signs had been there for months, maybe even years. The hushed phone calls, the sudden business trips, the way he had started treating me like a stranger in my own home. But it wasn't just the emotional distance, it was the finances. That was my first real clue that something was wrong. 6 months ago, I had noticed strange withdrawals from our joint account, large sums of money disappearing into an account I didn't recognize. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe an investment, a loan, something he had forgotten to mention. But when I casually brought it up over dinner, he barely looked up from his phone. It's nothing for you to worry about, he had said, his tone dismissive. Just a temporary transfer for business. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just dealing with a distant husband. I was dealing with a liar, and I wasn't about to let him rob me blind. Over the next few weeks, I played the role of the oblivious wife, nodding and smiling whenever he fed me another excuse, all while quietly preparing for war. I opened a separate bank account, started moving my personal savings over in small, unnoticeable increments. I kept records of every strange transaction, every suspicious expense, every lie he told me. And when he started pushing to refinance the house, something inside me told me to pay close attention. He had been careless, distracted, too focused on whatever grand scheme he was working on to realize he had signed away his own rights to the house. That's right. During our renovation last year, I had managed to get the deed transferred solely into my name. A technicality, but a critical one. One he never even questioned. And now, as I stood in the kitchen holding his pathetic excuse for a goodbye, I realized something. He thought he had won. He thought I was powerless. He thought wrong. I set the note down carefully, my pulse slowing as the initial shock gave way to something steadier, stronger resolve. He had made his move. Now it was my turn. I grabbed my phone and typed out a message to my best friend, Claire, who just so happened to be a top-tier divorce attorney. It's time. He made his move. Now we make ours. Seconds later, the read receipt appeared, followed by 3 simple words. Let's ruin him. I took one last look around the house, my house, before exhaling deeply and cracking my knuckles. David had underestimated me for the last time. Here's the next section of the story. Written in first-person perspective with suspense, tension, and emotional depth, I sat at my kitchen table, gripping my coffee mug so tightly that the ceramic felt like it might crack beneath my fingers. The weight of the betrayal was still settling over me, thick and suffocating, but beneath the initial shock, something else had taken root, an icy, calculating determination. David had thought he could erase me from my own life with a few sentences, scrawled on a damn electric bill, that I'd crumble, pack up my things, and slink away quietly like some discarded inconvenience. He was about to learn how wrong he was. My phone buzzed beside me. "Claire," I answered before the first ring had even finished. "Tell me you have something." "Oh, I have more than something," Claire said, her voice sharp, efficient, the voice of a woman who had destroyed more than a few arrogant men in divorce court. "I just pulled the preliminary records. David's been playing a very risky game, and he's about to lose." I sat up straighter. "What did you find?" Claire let out a low chuckle. "First off, the money. He's been siphoning funds out of your joint account for over a year. Most of it's been funneled into a separate business account under his name, but get this, he's been trying to buy a property. A condo. In her name." I stiffened. "Her? There's always a her in cases like these." Of course there was. "Her name is Emily Lawson," Claire continued. 27, yoga instructor, part-time influencer. And based on what I just pulled, I'd say she thinks she's moving into that condo with him in about a week." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Wow, he really thought he could just erase me overnight. "Oh, honey, he's not just erasing you. He's replacing you," Claire said. "And the best part? He's using your money to do it." I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply, forcing my heartbeat to slow. I should have felt devastated, heartbroken. Maybe a part of me was, but mostly I felt something far more dangerous. Rage. "All right," I said, voice steady. "Tell me what I need to do." Claire exhaled, her tone shifting into that ruthless, take-no-prisoners mode that made her one of the best lawyers in the city. "First things first, you need to get to the bank. Now. Freeze every account with your name on it before he drains them completely. Then meet me at my office. We're going to build a case so airtight that when this goes to court, David won't just lose the money, he'll lose everything." I was already on my feet, grabbing my purse. On it. The drive to the bank was a blur of barely restrained fury and cold, calculated planning. The moment I stepped inside, I went straight to the teller, my voice firm but calm. "I need to freeze all accounts under my name and remove myself from any joint accounts shared with my husband. Immediately." The teller, a polite woman in her 50s, gave me a sympathetic look. She must have seen this situation before, women scrambling to protect themselves from husbands who thought they could outmaneuver them. She nodded. "Of course, ma'am. Let me pull up your records." I drummed my fingers on the counter as she worked, my patience hanging by a thread. Finally, she looked up, her expression shifting into something almost hesitant. "Miss S. Calloway, there's a problem." My stomach clenched. "What kind of problem?" She hesitated. "Your husband. He's already emptied the accounts. The last transfer was processed less than an hour ago. Less than an hour ago." Rage surged through me, hot and searing. He knew. He had been a step ahead. Somehow he knew I'd come for the money, and he had moved first. But he had underestimated me again. I smiled tightly, masking the fury that burned beneath my skin. "That's all right," I said smoothly. "I have other ways to get what's mine." The teller gave me a cautious nod as she finalized the account closures, but I barely heard her. My mind was already spinning, recalculating, adjusting my strategy. David thought he had won, that he had shut me out completely, but he had forgotten one crucial detail: the house. My house. The one he had been so careless about, so distracted by his new life that he had signed away his own rights without even realizing it. He had stolen my money. I was about to steal everything else. By the time I reached Claire's office, she was already waiting with a folder full of legal documents. She arched an eyebrow as I walked in, reading the expression on my face instantly. "He drained the accounts, didn't he?" I nodded, jaw tight. Claire smirked. "Perfect." I blinked. "Perfect?" She flipped open the folder, pulling out a stack of papers and sliding them toward me. Because that just made this a whole lot easier. He committed fraud, financial abuse, and if we can tie this to any of his business dealings, we might even be able to make a criminal case out of it. I exhaled, my grip on the chair tightening. So what's the plan? Claire leaned back, smiling like a shark that had just scented blood. We let him think he won. Let him settle into his little fantasy with his yoga Barbie. Let him get comfortable. And then we take everything. I stared at her for a moment, then slowly. A smile spread across my lips. For the first time since reading that note, I felt it. Victory. David was about to learn a very painful lesson. Never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose. So now, I had a choice: confront him head-on and risk losing everything, or play the long game and let him think he was still in control. What would you do? Comment 1 if you think I should expose him immediately, or 2 if you think I should let him dig his own grave first. Trust me. Things are about to take a turn that even he never saw coming. Let's see what you think before we continue. The moment I stepped out of Claire's office, the cold evening air hit me like a slap. My mind was racing, my heartbeat steady but hard. David thought he was in control, thought he had outplayed me by draining our accounts before I could react. He believed I would be scrambling now, desperate, defeated. He was wrong. I wasn't going to fight him on his terms. No, I was going to let him think he had won while I built my own checkmate. Sliding into my car, I dialed Megan, my best friend since college, and the one person who knew every dark, twisted detail of my marriage before I had even fully admitted it to myself. She answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're not about to do something stupid," she said, her voice dry but laced with concern. I let out a humorless laugh. Define stupid. If it involves showing up at his new place and causing a scene, that's stupid. I rolled my eyes. Please, I'm not giving him the satisfaction. Good. Because I did some digging, and you're gonna love this. I sat up straighter. Tell me. Megan sighed dramatically. Oh, where do I start? Our dear David isn't as clever as he thinks. He may have drained the accounts, but he forgot one thing: digital breadcrumbs. I tracked a few of the transactions, and guess what? The condo he was trying to buy for his little yoga Barbie? It's already tied up in a legal dispute. I blinked. What? Yeah. Apparently, the original owner backed out of the deal last minute, and David hasn't been able to finalize the purchase. He's been throwing money at it, trying to make it work. But legally, he doesn't own it yet. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. So what does that mean for me? Megan's voice turned smug. It means that while he was busy screwing you over, he put himself in a position where he has nowhere to go. He needs that condo, and without access to your money, he's screwed. A slow smile spread across my lips. So if I make things just a little harder for him, Megan chuckled. Exactly. If you tighten the leash, he won't just fall, he'll crash. I exhaled, my mind already piecing together the next steps. Okay, I'll let Claire know. In the meantime, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need to know everything about Emily. Where she teaches, where she lives, who she thinks David really is. Megan whistled. Going for the kill, huh? I smirked. Just doing my due diligence. I hung up, gripping my phone tightly. David had taken everything from me. Now, it was my turn. The next morning, I walked into my bank with a new plan. Claire had given me one final weapon to wield, a legal hold on any assets still tied to my name, including any accounts David had yet to touch. If I couldn't take back what he had stolen, I could at least make sure he couldn't touch another dime. The banker looked up at me, polite but cautious. Miss S. Calloway, what can I do for you today? I smiled sweetly, setting a folder of documents on the counter. I need to file a claim of financial fraud and restrict any further transactions related to my husband's business dealings. His brows lifted. Fraud? I nodded, pushing the papers toward him. Unauthorized withdrawals, misappropriated marital funds, and asset concealment. He flipped through the pages. his expression growing more serious. You have evidence of this? I leaned in slightly. Let's just say my lawyer has been very thorough. He hesitated, then gave me a curt nod. I'll start the process now. Once the hold is in place, your husband won't be able to access any shared assets or use marital funds for unauthorized purchases. Perfect. As I walked out of the bank, I could almost feel the walls closing in on David. By the time he realized what I had done, it would be too late. I drove to Megan's apartment, where she was already waiting with a laptop open. "You're gonna love this," she said, spinning the screen toward me. I leaned in. It was an Instagram post Emily, posing in a sunlit yoga studio, captioned, "Excited for the next big chapter in my life. Can't wait to move into our dream home." I scoffed. "Our dream home?" Megan grinned. "Oh, babe. She really thinks she's winning." I stared at the post, something dark curling inside me. Emily was young, naive. Maybe she even believed whatever fantasy David had fed her. But that didn't make her innocent. She had my life. I tapped my nails against the table. "You think she knows?" Megan arched a brow. "Knows what?" "That he used my money to buy her future." Megan smirked. "I'd bet she has no clue." I smiled, slow and sharp. Then it's time she found out. David had built his perfect little illusion. I was about to shatter it. David thought he had won. He thought he had stripped me of everything: my home, my savings, my dignity. He thought I was powerless. But what he didn't realize was that I had been preparing for this moment long before he ever decided to walk out of our marriage. The morning after my visit to the bank, I sat in my car outside Emily's yoga studio, fingers tapping against the steering wheel. I had spent the night going through every detail. Megan had dug up. Emily was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with a social media presence filled with filtered perfection, soft sunlight, handcrafted lattes, dreamy quotes about finding true love and starting over. She had no idea the fantasy she was living in was built on stolen money, my money. Megan had suggested sending Emily a simple message, just enough to plant the seed of doubt, but I wanted to see her reaction firsthand. I wanted to look her in the eyes and watch as her world started to unravel. I grabbed my phone and pulled up her Instagram, my thumb hovering over the latest post. "Starting a new chapter with my soulmate. Grateful beyond words." I exhaled sharply, then typed a single comment. "Does your soulmate know the condo he promised you isn't actually his yet?" I hit send. And then I waited. Less than 10 minutes later, Emily walked out of the studio, her phone in one hand, her face twisted in confusion. She was scanning the parking lot, her brow furrowed, lips slightly parted, like she was trying to make sense of something that didn't fit the perfect narrative in her head. And then she saw me. She hesitated, then walked toward me cautiously. "Are you?" She trailed off, eyeing me with uncertainty. I smiled, stepping out of my car. "I'm the wife." Her face paled instantly. I watched as she struggled to mask her reaction, forcing a tight smile. "I don't know what you're talking about." I tilted my head slightly, keeping my voice calm. "Oh, I think you do." She exhaled, folding her arms across her chest. "Look, I don't want any drama. Whatever happened between you and David, that's between you two." I let out a quiet laugh. "Oh, sweetheart. You don't get to play the innocent bystander when you've been living off my money?" She stiffened. "That's not true." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the screenshots Megan had sent me: the bank transactions, the property dispute records, even a few messages between David and his lawyer discussing the financial strain he was under. I held it up. "You recognize this address? It's the condo David promised you. Except there's one little problem: he doesn't own it. And thanks to a few legal roadblocks I put in place, he never will." Emily's mouth opened, then closed. I could see the cracks forming, the uncertainty in her eyes, the slow realization that the man she thought was her future had built that future on lies. "He told me you two were separated," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "He said the money was his." I shrugged. "And you believed him?" Her jaw tightened. But there was something else in her expression now, something fragile. I leaned in just slightly. Let me guess he told you he was the victim. That I was controlling, that I didn't support him, that I didn't appreciate him. She swallowed hard. I smirked. Yeah. He used to say the same thing about his first wife. Emily flinched. I let that sink in for a moment before stepping back. I just thought you should know what you're getting into. Because trust me, sweetheart, if he did it to me, he'll do it to you. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, phone clutched in her trembling hands. By the time I got back to my car, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Now. David. I smiled. Oh, I was just getting started. David's message sat on my phone screen, glowing like a warning sign. We need to talk. Now. I could practically hear his voice, laced with frustration, maybe even a little panic. He knew something was slipping through his fingers, but he didn't know just how much control he had already lost. I took my time responding, let him stew for a while. When I finally typed back, my message was short. Meet me at the Mercer in an hour. No games. The Mercer was a quiet, upscale bar just outside of downtown. Neutral ground. A place where people sealed deals over whiskey and hushed conversations, not somewhere he could throw a tantrum. I knew he'd come. An hour later, I walked in, scanning the dimly lit space until I spotted him in the corner. He was nursing a drink, his foot tapping anxiously against the floor. When he saw me, his expression darkened, but he forced a smirk. You've been busy, he said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. I slid into the chair across from him, folding my hands neatly on the table. Not as busy as you've been. His smirk faltered. You really had to drag Emily into this? I shrugged. She deserved to know the truth. He exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of his nose. Look, I don't have time for your little revenge tour. You need to stop whatever game you think you're playing before this gets out of hand. I leaned back, tilting my head. Oh, David, you still think you're the one in control. His eyes narrowed. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing here, but if you're trying to ruin me, I don't have to try, I interrupted. You did that all by yourself. He went silent. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. I assume you recognize these? His eyes flickered down, scanning the bank statements, the property records, the wire transfers he thought had been buried deep. His fingers twitched slightly before he looked up, forcing another smirk. So what? You think waving a few documents in my face is going to scare me? I held his gaze, calm and steady. No, David. But the IRS might be interested, and so might the police. His smirk vanished. I leaned in slightly. You see, I did a little digging of my own. Turns out, your business investments weren't just reckless, they were fraudulent. Money you moved without authorization. Funds transferred under false pretenses. And the best part? Your name is all over it. Mine isn't. He stared at me, his jaw tightening. And just in case you're wondering, I continued, I've already started the legal process. Megan's team has everything documented. By the time you even think about making a countermove, it'll be too late. David's grip on his glass tightened. You don't want to do this. I laughed softly. I didn't want to do this, but you made sure I had no other choice. A muscle in his jaw twitched. You think you can just destroy me and walk away? I held my ground. I don't need to destroy you, David. You did that to yourself. I'm just making sure you don't take me down with you. For the first time, real fear flickered in his eyes. He knew. He knew I had him cornered. I grabbed my phone, stood up, and smoothed down my jacket. I'd say it's been fun, but we both know that's a lie. I'll let the lawyers handle the rest. As I turned to leave, he reached out, gripping my wrist tightly. His voice was low, desperate. Wait. I looked down at his hand, then back at him. You don't get to touch me anymore, David. He let go. I walked out of the Mercer without looking back, stepping into the cool night air. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. David had always been good at bluffing. For years, he had convinced everyone, including me, that he was the one in control, that he was the mastermind. the provider, the one pulling all the strings. But now he was unraveling. I could see it in the way his fingers clenched around his glass, in the slight twitch of his jaw, in the way he struggled to hold my gaze. He was trying to find a way out, searching for a move that would put him back on top. But I had taken all of his options away. I didn't sit back down. I didn't need to. I had already won. You should go ahead and get yourself a lawyer, I said calmly, adjusting the strap of my bag on my shoulder. You're going to need one. David let out a dry, humorless chuckle, shaking his head. You think you've backed me into a corner, don't you? I tilted my head slightly. I don't think, David. I know. His jaw tightened. You don't have proof of anything. I sighed, reaching into my bag and pulling out a slim, black folder. I set it down in front of him, watching as his eyes flickered to it warily. What's this? He muttered, but he already knew. I leaned in slightly. That's everything, David. Every wire transfer, every forged signature, every shady deal you thought was buried under layers of paperwork. Turns out, banks don't take too kindly to accounts being drained under false pretenses. And guess what? Neither do the authorities. He stared at the folder like it was a ticking time bomb. I gave him a moment to process before I continued. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign the divorce papers. You're going to walk away from my house, my business, and my life without so much as a fight. And in return, I'll consider not pressing charges. His head snapped up, eyes burning with anger. Are you serious? Dead serious. His fingers twitched as if he wanted to snatch the folder and tear it apart, but he knew that wouldn't do him any good. The damage was already done. I could feel his frustration vibrating off of him, his ego struggling to accept that he had finally lost. You can't do this to me, he muttered, more to himself than to me. I exhaled slowly, leveling him with a look. You did this to yourself. Silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken tension. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he pushed the folder away. You think this makes you powerful? He muttered, voice tight. You think you've won? I allowed myself a small, knowing smile. I don't think, David. I know. I turned on my heel and walked out of that bar, stepping into the cool night air with my head held high. For the first time in years, I was truly free. The night air felt heavier than usual as I stepped into my car, gripping the steering wheel with more force than necessary. My heartbeat hadn't settled since I walked out of that bar, leaving David with the undeniable truth his empire of lies was crumbling, and I had been the one to light the match. But I wasn't done yet. I had spent years playing the quiet, accommodating wife. I had let things slide, ignored the red flags, and swallowed my instincts in the name of keeping the peace. Not anymore. Now, every move I made was calculated. Every step had been meticulously planned. I wasn't just going to win. I was going to make sure David felt the full weight of every single betrayal he had inflicted on me. I took a deep breath and pulled my phone from my bag, dialing a number I had memorized weeks ago. Hey, it's me, I said the moment the line connected. Everything go as planned? Sarah's voice was sharp, businesslike. She had been waiting for this call, just as prepared for this battle as I was. He didn't sign anything yet, but he's rattled, I said, my fingers drumming against the dashboard. He knows he's out of options. He's just trying to figure out if he can still play his way out of this. Sarah let out a short, knowing laugh. Classic. He's always underestimated you. He still thinks there's a move left on the board. I exhaled, staring out at the city lights flickering in the distance. Then we need to make sure there isn't. Agreed. I already filed the petition for divorce this morning, she said. By tomorrow, he'll be served. And by the end of the week, we'll have an emergency hearing for the financial misconduct. A part of me wanted to feel guilty about how efficiently I was tearing down David's carefully constructed world. But then I remembered the months I had spent digging through his lies, tracing every financial decision he made, watching him drain our joint accounts like I was nothing more than an inconvenience standing in his way. No, I didn't feel guilty. I felt powerful. Did you freeze the accounts? I asked. Every single one that had your name attached to it, Sarah confirmed. And I put in a request to flag any large transfers from his personal accounts just in case he tries to stash money somewhere before the court can touch it. I let out a breath, my grip on the phone tightening. Good. That should slow him down. Sarah hesitated for a moment before speaking again. Listen, you know he's going to lash out, right? This is a man who doesn't know how to lose. I closed my eyes for a beat, already knowing she was right. David wasn't the type to accept defeat with grace. He was the kind of man who would set everything on fire if it meant he could walk away without feeling like a failure. He's going to try something, Sarah continued. I need you to be prepared for that. I opened my eyes, my reflection staring back at me in the windshield. I am, and I meant it. By the next morning, the fallout had officially begun. I was in my home office, finalizing a shipment for a bulk jewelry order, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Nice try, but you don't get to win this. I stared at the message for a long moment, my stomach twisting. David. A second later, another message came through. You think you've cornered me? You have no idea what you're dealing with. I clenched my jaw, refusing to let the words get to me. He was posturing. He was desperate. And desperate men made mistakes. Sarah had been right. He was going to lash out. And then my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but the caller ID made my breath catch. Marcus, our real estate agent. I picked up immediately. Marcus? Nora, he said, his voice tight with unease. I just got a call from David. He's trying to list the house again. I blinked, my fingers gripping the phone tighter. What? He told me the paperwork issue was resolved and that we could proceed with the sale immediately. He was aggressive about it. Marcus hesitated. I told him I needed your approval, but he insisted he could handle it on his own. Of course he did. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. David was scrambling. He thought he could strong-arm his way through this, thought he could bluff his way back into control. But he wasn't dealing with the same woman he had manipulated for years. I straightened. Don't do anything, Marcus. The house is legally mine. He has no authority to sell it. I figured as much, Marcus said. But, just so you know, he seemed really on edge. I don't think he's handling this well. No, he wasn't. And that made him dangerous. I thanked Marcus and ended the call, immediately dialing Sarah. He's trying to sell the house again, I said the second she picked up. Jesus, she muttered. Okay, we'll send an official cease and desist through legal channels. If he tries to push it, he'll be in violation of property laws. He won't care, I murmured. Sarah sighed. Then we make him care. Nora, if he keeps pushing, we can file for a protective order. This is harassment. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing. Not yet. Let's see how far he's willing to go first. Sarah was quiet for a moment. All right, but be careful. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I will. But deep down, I knew this was far from over. David wasn't just fighting to win. He was fighting to survive. The moment I pulled into my driveway, I knew something was off. The porch light was on, casting long, eerie shadows across the front yard. But the house itself felt different. Like it wasn't entirely mine anymore. I could feel it an intrusion, a violation of the space I had worked so hard to reclaim. My fingers clenched around the steering wheel as I scanned the area, my gut twisting with unease. David had been here. I knew it without needing proof. It was the way the doormat was slightly out of place, the faint disturbance in the air, like something had been shifted when I wasn't around to stop it. I inhaled deeply, forcing my pulse to steady before stepping out of the car. The night air was crisp, biting against my skin as I approached the front door. My keys jingled in my hand, but before I could slip them into the lock, I saw it. A note, taped right in the center of the door, taunting me like a ghost from the past. I hesitated. My breath caught somewhere between dread and anger, before finally ripping the paper from the wood. My eyes scanned the familiar, hurried handwriting, my stomach turning with every word. You think you've won? You think this is over? I built this life. I made you. Without me, you're nothing. You're going to regret this. My grip on the note tightened, the paper crumpling in my fist. He was unraveling. This wasn't just desperation anymore, this was a warning. A threat. I pushed open the door, my entire body tense as I stepped inside. The house was silent, but it didn't feel empty. I flipped on the lights, scanning every corner, every shadowed space, half expecting him to emerge from the darkness with that arrogant smirk of his. But he wasn't here, not physically at least. I moved cautiously through the house, checking every room, every closet, making sure nothing had been disturbed. But then I reached my office. The door was ajar. I had left it closed. My pulse quickened as I nudged it open the rest of the way, my eyes immediately locking onto my desk. The folders I had carefully arranged that morning were scattered across the surface. Documents shuffled, some even missing. The laptop I had left in sleep mode was wide open, the screen glowing faintly with a login prompt. He had been in here. Panic surged up my throat, but I swallowed it down. I couldn't afford to lose my composure. Not now. I reached for my phone and immediately dialed Sarah. He was here, I said the moment she picked up. In my house. He went through my things. Sarah swore under her breath. Are you safe? Yeah, he's gone. But he left a note. He's not letting this go. There was a pause. You need to call the police, Nora. This is breaking and entering. This is stalking. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing. I know. But I need to figure out what he was looking for first. Some of my files are missing and my laptop was tampered with. Sarah's voice tightened. Do you have backups? Of course, I said, already moving toward my desk and opening a drawer where I kept a separate hard drive. But I need to know what he took. Don't stay there alone, she warned. I'm coming over. I exhaled, nodding even though she couldn't see me. Yeah. Okay. Hanging up, I sank into my chair, staring at the chaos David had left behind. This wasn't just about the divorce anymore. This was about control, about power. He was losing and he knew it. And now, he was grasping at whatever straws he could find to drag me down with him. I spent the next half hour going through my files, cross-checking everything with my backups, trying to pinpoint what was missing. It wasn't money-related, that much I was sure of. I had secured all my financial records in an encrypted drive, and nothing suggested he had access to that. No, this was something else. And then it hit me, my personal journal. I scrambled through the drawers, my heart hammering. It was gone. Panic clawed at my chest. That journal held everything. My thoughts, my fears, my plans, every moment of doubt, every hidden insecurity. If he had it, he had leverage. He had a way to manipulate me, to twist my words, to make me look unstable, erratic. I gritted my teeth, fury overtaking fear. So that was his play. I was still reeling when the doorbell rang. My head snapped up, my entire body rigid. David wouldn't come back, not like this. But still, I moved cautiously, peering through the peephole before exhaling in relief. Sarah. I unlocked the door, stepping aside to let her in. It's worse than I thought, I admitted. He took my journal. Her expression hardened. That son of a, I know, I cut in. And I don't know what he's planning to do with it, but it can't be good. Sarah folded her arms, thinking, he's trying to build a case against you. Maybe make you look unstable, like you're unfit to handle the finances or even the business. I swallowed hard. Then we need to get ahead of it. Sarah nodded. We will. First, we file a police report. Then, we prepare a statement with your legal team. If he tries anything, we make sure the courts know exactly what he's doing. I took a shaky breath, grounding myself. Okay. Sarah placed a reassuring hand on my arm. Listen to me, Nora. He's losing, and he knows it. That's why he's resorting to this. But he doesn't get to win. Not this time. I met her gaze, strength rekindling inside me. No, he didn't. and I was going to make damn sure of that. The morning after Sarah and I filed the police report, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The fear, the paranoia, the helplessness that David had tried to trap me in it was fading. Not gone, but no longer paralyzing me. He had broken into my home, taken my journal, and left a threat disguised as a taunt. But for the first time, I wasn't reacting from a place of fear. I was thinking ahead. As I poured my coffee, my phone buzzed with a notification. Sarah's name flashed across the screen. "Sarah, call me ASAP. It's about David." I didn't hesitate. "What happened?" Sarah sighed on the other end. "I got a call from a friend in the legal department. David's lawyer just filed an emergency motion against you." I gripped my coffee mug, my knuckles white. "For what?" "He's claiming emotional distress. Says you're harassing him, trying to sabotage his career, even accusing you of making false financial claims to ruin his reputation." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You're kidding." "I wish I was," Sarah muttered. "But the real kicker? He attached excerpts from your journal as evidence that you're unstable." A slow, simmering anger replaced the shock. "So that's his plan. Paint me as the crazy, vengeful ex-wife, make me look like the unstable one while he plays the victim." "That's exactly it," she confirmed. "But we can fight this, Nora. We already have proof that he broke into your house and stole that journal. We'll counter this motion and make it clear that he's the one who's been harassing you." I set my mug down, my hands no longer shaking. Good, because I'm done playing defense. By noon, Sarah and I were sitting in her office, going over our strategy. "We'll use the home security footage," she said, typing furiously on her laptop. "The cameras outside didn't catch him, but we have proof that he tampered with your office. That alone discredits his claim." I nodded. "And what about the financial records? The ones that show he was siphoning money from our accounts?" She smiled grimly. "Already compiling them. Once we present those, the courts will see him for what he is, a manipulative liar trying to cover his tracks." I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of everything closing in. "He's not going to stop, is he?" Sarah met my gaze. "No, not until you stop him." And that was exactly what I planned to do. The court hearing was set for the following Monday. I spent the weekend gathering statements, reviewing every document, and mentally preparing for what I knew was coming. David would try to twist everything, play the victim, make me seem like the villain. But he had underestimated me before. Monday morning, I walked into the courthouse with my head held high. Sarah was at my side, a thick folder of evidence in her hands, her confidence unwavering. David was already inside, sitting at the defendant's table with his lawyer, a smug smirk on his face as he leaned back in his chair. The moment the judge entered, the air in the room shifted. David's lawyer spoke first, spinning a carefully crafted story about how I had launched a malicious campaign against my ex-husband, how I had fabricated financial allegations out of bitterness, how I had even gone as far as to stage a break-in to frame him. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. Then it was our turn. Sarah stood, her voice firm. "Your Honor, we have undeniable proof that my client is the victim in this situation. Not only did Mr. Dawson break into her home, but he also stole her personal property and is now attempting to weaponize it against her." She presented the security footage, the documented financial records, even past messages. David had sent me messages laced with threats and manipulations. As the evidence piled up, I watched David's confidence falter. His smug expression slowly morphed into one of realization. He had overplayed his hand. The judge took a long pause before finally looking at him. "Mr. Dawson, it is clear that you have engaged in a pattern of harassment and financial misconduct against your ex-wife. This court will not tolerate such behavior." David swallowed hard, his hands tightening into fists. The judge continued. "Effective immediately, a restraining order will be placed against you. Additionally, the court will be pursuing legal action regarding the financial discrepancies presented today." David's lawyer tried to object, but the judge shut him down with a sharp glance. I took a breath, my chest finally feeling lighter. It was over. David had lost. In the weeks that followed, my life slowly began to piece itself back together. David's reputation was in shambles. The financial records exposed his fraudulent activities, and the judge's ruling had sealed his fate. He was facing multiple charges, and his career was officially over. As for me, I was finally free. I focused on my business, expanding it in ways I had always dreamed of. For the first time in years, I made decisions without second-guessing myself, without worrying about someone belittling me or trying to control me. One evening, as I stood in my newly renovated home, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. David had tried to take everything from me, my money, my security, my sense of self. But in the end, all he had done was free me from the illusion that I needed him. I had won. And I had done it on my own terms. He thought he won. He thought I'd be broken, begging him to reconsider. Instead, I walked away with everything he tried to steal from me, and he was left with nothing. But here's the real question: was that enough? Should I have taken things even further? Should I have made sure he never recovered? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've ever dealt with betrayal like this, share your story, we're here for it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Trust is valuable, but blind trust is dangerous. I learned the hard way that financial independence isn't just about money, it's about control, security, and freedom. If someone tries to manipulate you, gaslight you, or make you feel small, don't ignore the signs, protect yourself, document everything, know your rights. In this country, knowledge and preparation are your greatest weapons. I refused to be a victim, and that decision saved me. If you ever feel trapped in a situation like mine, remember you are stronger than you think. Stand up, fight back, and take control of your own life before someone else does.